Good morning. Let's look together at Luke chapter 18, verse 10 through 14, and again at the kingdom of God and what it might be like. So, two people went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. Now, the Pharisee, standing by himself, was praying like this: God, I thank you that I'm not like other people, thieves, rogues, and adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week and I give a tenth of my income. But the tax collector, standing far off, would not even look up to heaven, but was beating his breast and saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his home justified rather than the other. Um, to the listener, actually, this isn't too difficult because the Pharisee really was doing what the Pharisee was expected to do. And he was praying prayers which were ancient prayers and were very common. And for the listeners, the social map fits fine. There's no great shocker in this, really, because the Pharisee is part of the temple and he's allowed into the sacred areas and he's praying prayers of holiness. Um, and in some ways, there's echoes of this, like the Good Samaritan story, because actually, Samaria is probably the ends of the social world. That's the furthest you can go out, and they were coming towards Jerusalem, the center and heart of where God and His presence were. And then there's this incident of death and blood and sort of injury, and it would be quite right for the Pharisee to walk by because he wouldn't want to be tainted. He wouldn't want to be made impure or not sacred. So the listeners are hearing this story and thinking, "Oh yeah, we see this sort of thing." I mean, it's a bit like you know you're expected to do this. If you there once was an intern and he booked and went to the evening service at the well, and he raised his hands and lip synced to all the worship and was having prophetic thoughts whilst the teaching was going on. It's the sort of thing you would expect somebody who was holy in the center of the temple to be doing. But then off to one side, there's somebody who actually doesn't go to church very often, not even in a small group, and went on Zoom and thought, do you know what? I really need to get my act together and connect more with my Father in heaven. And this is where the thunderclap comes in. This is where Jesus steps in and says to the crowd, do you know what, guys? The tax collector is the one who was justified. He actually makes no judgment in the sense that there's no merit or blame. They're both doing what they should be doing. But what Jesus is saying is actually, no, the kingdom of God is now in the world. It's moved out from the temple. It's moved out from the sacred spaces. And we're going to find the kingdom of God effective and moving and powerfully infiltrating to the ends of the earth. And that must have been a real shake-up for them in the crowd. I guess we probably lose a little bit of the impact of that because we don't identify so wholly with the social map which this story is describing. And that's why I was trying to contextualize it. And I do love the interns, don't worry, they're great. And actually, he's not saying that the kingdom of God doesn't exist within the sacred spaces. But what Jesus is saying is that the kingdom of God is at move at the furthest ends of the earth. And it doesn't matter where you feel you are and what you've been doing or how you feel that your relationship with heaven is at the moment. You need to know that the kingdom of God is moving, and it's like a tiny little seed. It's already been planted in there. It's a treasure which is in your heart. And there's nothing more that your Father in heaven would want to do today but to meet with you out in the world as you beat your breast and ask to be spending more time with him. So blessings on you today, and move out into those further spaces and encounter the kingdom of God.